with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our next presenter, Majid Manzoor, who's going to be covering onboarding new users and change management. So I'm going to hop out of this presentation and go over to Majid, who's going to go ahead and start his presentation. So Majid, feel free to take it away.
Hello everyone, I'm Majid Manzoor. I am the co-founder and CTO at Synergize. We're excited to be sponsoring Admin Training Week, and we have some great information to share with you today. The focus of today's presentation is about onboarding new users into Google Apps and also handling your change management strategy with a specific focus on end user training. To give you a little bit of background about Synergize, we are a company that started about a year ago with our mission being to teach the world how to use Google Apps. We are also former Google engineers, and we have a lot of experience in IT and training. We've built a fully interactive training system that works directly inside of Google Apps, and it's currently deployed in over 1,000 organizations worldwide, providing training for over 1 million users. And you can follow us on Google+ and Twitter, and visit our website at synergize.com. A little bit of background about myself. As a CTO at Synergize, my role is being responsible for our product technology, as well as our training content and development. I'm also a Google Apps certified administrator and a Google education trainer. Prior to founding Synergize, I was actually in charge of IT for Google in Canada, and my role involved providing support for employees at Google running Google Apps in multiple divisions. I have over 15 years of experience overall in IT support and training, and I'm also the owner of the Google Apps Administrators community on Google+, so feel free to join us on there where we're sharing some great information. My email and Twitter handle are there as well if you wish to get in touch with me. So let's dive right in. When you're onboarding your users, it's very important that you have your organization structure set up in advance. And the reason for that is it's going to make the management of both your users and devices a lot easier for you, as you won't have to customize the services and settings for each individual user. By segmenting all of them into different organizations, you can enable and disable certain features and settings. And that way, when you have new users, you can put them directly into organizations with predetermined settings. Some things you'll want to consider when you're designing the organization is possibly segmenting them by roles in your organization or departments or even physical locations if you have multiple buildings. You'll also want to consider providing your IT team with an organization that you can use to help them test new features and give them a test environment. And if you're using an LDAP structure, such as an Active Directory, you may want to consider replicating that into Google Apps to structure your organization. So we'll go into a bit more detail about how you would segment your organizations. Getting into your organizations is easy. In the Google Apps Admin Console, if you navigate into the Users section on the right-hand side, you will see a list of your organizations. And hovering over the top-level domain, there will be a little arrow icon you can click on, which will allow you to add and edit organizations. Now, if you're in a business, you might want to consider structuring your organizations around employee roles, such as sales, engineering, and IT, or even specific departments. And this might be because you might want to enable or disable certain Google Apps features for each of those roles. And you also might want to consider setting up your organizations. If you have subsidiary businesses and domains, you might want to create an organization for each one of your businesses so that you can manage them individually. And also, if you have different physical locations, such as offices or even different countries, that's another thing to consider, as there might be local laws or regulations that you need to comply with and set your individual settings for each organization. Now, if you're in a Google Apps for Education environment, Typically, you'll want to structure your organizations around your staff roles, such as teachers and admins, and as well as segmenting out the organizations for your students. And the reason for that is you might not want to have your students have full access to all of the Google Apps features. And to give you an example, you might want to restrict them to only be able to send email within your domain, but you want your staff to be able to send email inside and outside of your domain. So setting them into different organizations will allow you to do that. Another common organizational structure we've seen with some of our clients is that they've segmented student roles by their age groups. So you might have certain grades in a specific organization where you need to enable or disable features such as Hangouts, and that's another option. And then, of course, if you're managing Google Apps for Education at a district level and you have multiple schools under your district, it's a good idea to start with the actual schools as your top organizations, and then go in from there and separate them out into staff and students. So when you're also, creating your organizations, you want to obviously get your users into Google Apps, and there are multiple ways you can do that. If you're a smaller organization, it's probably going to be easier for you to manage your users manually through the Google Apps admin console. But if you're a medium or larger size organization where you have hundreds or thousands of users, you may want to consider automating some of that user creation process. And there are a few options such as CSV import, Google Apps Directory Sync, and the great product Flash panel that can help you manage and automate those procedures. So we'll go into some detail about how you would manually create users in the Google Apps admin console. It's very simple. You simply navigate into the user's control, and from there you can create individual users into a specific organizational unit right off the bat, so you don't have to move them afterwards. So once you pick the correct organization you want the user to be in, you simply click on the Add More Users icon at the top right, and then you'll be able to choose to add a user manually. The options you'll see here are to give them a first name, a last name, choose their email address, and then you can give the option to either set a specific password or generate a temporary password for the user. My recommendation is to generate a temporary password for the user. That way, when they first log into Google Apps, they are allowed to set their own password, and the temporary password is just used to give them initial access. If you want to create more than one user at a time, you do have the option of importing a spreadsheet of multiple users. And the way you accomplish that is by doing it at the top level organizational unit. So it's important that you have that selected first. And then when you click on the Add More Users icon, you will actually have an option to add several users as once as a CSV file upload. So you can create the CSV file in Google Spreadsheets and export it. And the advantage here is that you can create multiple users at once. So if you look at the example, you'll see the columns you'll need: your email address, first name, last name, password, and this will create them automatically. Now, in addition to be able to create new accounts through a CSV import, you also have the option of updating existing accounts. So if you need to change a bulk number of names or passwords for your organizations, you can do that through the CSV by selecting the Update Existing Accounts option, and that way, when you import it, everyone will get updated. You can also require users to change their password when a new or an updated user signs in. Again, this is kind of like giving them a temporary password to first get them logged into Google Apps. If you have an LDAP structure, like I mentioned, such as an Active Directory, a really great tool to help you sync that information into Google Apps is the Google Apps Directory Sync tool. And I've actually provided a link for you there, the bit.ly link, if you would like to get to the support information, which has a lot more details on how this works. But essentially, you run it on a server that connects to your LDAP system, and you can sync in all the information from that system, including users, groups, contacts, calendar resources, shared contacts directly from LDAP into Google Apps. This can also sync extra rich profile data, and you can have it run on a schedule so that it will automatically run and sync your LDAP. You could do it, say, daily, and that way you don't have to actually create your users manually. So this is a great way, to keep everything in sync, especially if you're already running this type of structure. Last option we can talk about is Flash Panel. So with the Flash Panel tool, there are multiple ways you can create users, either single or you can create them in bulk if you have multiple users. A really great feature I like about Flash Panel is that if you have a common set of settings and organizational units and Google Groups that you want to apply to new users when they start, you can actually save those as templates. And that way, when you want to create a new user with the same role, you can reuse that template, and it saves you from having to do all that work manually. In addition to managing your users, you can also have them apply an email signature when you create their account, and you can even send them a welcome email that you can customize. So Flash Panel is a great way to manage your users in an automated fashion. And if you'd like to find out more, you can visit flashpanel.com. So now that you've got your users into Google Apps and you've got your organizations set up, let's talk a little bit about what you want to do to actually onboard your users and get them up and running on Google Apps. I think it's important to, give them a checklist of things to do on their first day to get them set up on Google Apps. I also think it's important that you go through your security and support requirements and procedures with them so that everything is very clear in any event that they need to contact you. And lastly, I think it's very important that provide them with training, because you might have users who aren't familiar with Google Apps, or maybe they've only used Gmail, and really there's a lot more to it than just Gmail, so you want to get them up and running. And we'll talk about these in detail. This is kind of a checklist that I've set up. It's by no means a comprehensive list, but I think it covers everything you would want them to know in relation to Google Apps and have them set up. So I think the first thing obviously is getting them logged into Google Apps with their password. I highly recommend enabling two-factor authentication as well as an additional layer of security, because without it, the only thing preventing someone from compromising an account is one password. With two-factor authentication, there's a password and there's a generated code that the user needs to enter from their mobile device that will get them into their account, and it just makes it a lot harder for their account to get hacked or compromised. If you are using Windows machines, Macs, or Linux machines, and you've deployed Chrome, which I highly recommend as well, I think it's important to get your users signed into Chrome on their first day. It's going to save you a lot of headaches in the future. If, for example, they ever switch to a new computer, you can sign them into Chrome on the new computer, and it's going to bring in all of their Chrome settings, maybe their custom apps and extensions, also their bookmarks, which is another really important thing to users. So having them signed in will just make sure they never lose that information and it's synchronized with their Google Apps account. I think it's also important that you show them how to navigate into Google Apps. So typically the entry point for most organizations is navigating to gmail.com and signing in with your Google Apps account. From Gmail, you'll want to show them how to use the Google Apps Launcher to get to different Google Apps, such as Calendar, Drive, and so forth, and just make it easy for them to navigate in between all of the apps. If you're using mobile devices, it's probably a good idea to also walk through that setup with them on their first day, get their device synced up with their Google account, synced up with your domain, and have them up and running, and also help them set up the two-factor authentication on the mobile device. I think it's also important that you provide your users with comprehensive information around security within your domain, such as perhaps you have specific sharing policies as to what data is allowed to come in and out of your domain, or specific policies around who they're allowed to email and add to their Hangouts. And also you want to provide them with a way to get in touch with you if they need support. because typically you're going to be the first line of support for them, or your IT help desk is, and you'll want to give them a good way to get that information. One interesting thing we did at Google to help people get support is we actually put all the support contact information in a wallpaper, and we set that as the default wallpaper on everyone's computer. So that way, if they minimize their applications, they'll see the support information is there all the time. And if you are deploying Chromebooks, you can actually, set a custom wallpaper through the Chrome Management Console and have that automatically set up for your domain. And then, of course, the last thing you'll want to do is kind of introduce them to Google Apps and give them a bit of 101 training. And I'm going to go through, the core Google Apps and what I think are important things you should cover in your training when you're doing it. If you'd like to get a copy of this along with more detailed information, including links to all of this, please follow the link there. It's bit.ly/gappsday1. Feel free to copy and distribute that within your organization. So when you're providing them with security and support information, I mentioned it's important to be clear about what are the actual guidelines for security and data sharing and contact sharing, contact information within your domain. This is something users should know on day one so that they don't violate any of your security policies or restrictions. You'll also want to, if you're using mobile devices, you'll want to give them a way to, or a procedure to take in case they lose their device. If you've got the devices set up so that they're synchronized to your domain, users can actually navigate to the My Devices link that I've provided here, and it'll give them some self-service management tools that they can use in the event that they do lose their device, such as locating their device with GPS. They'll have the option to remotely, reset the passcode or make it ring or even lock and wipe the device. And as a Google Apps administrator, you also have the ability in the admin console under the device management section to kind of remotely wipe and block, lost devices in the event that occurs. You also want to give them support procedures in case they forget their password. How can they get in touch with you? Because if they forgot their password, remember, they're going to be locked out of their Google Apps account. So you have to have an alternate way for them to contact you, whether that be through a ticketing system, a phone system, or an alternate email system that you provide. And then when you go into training, these are the topics that I think are really important to cover on their first day. You got to remember, a lot of people coming into your organization, they might not be familiar with all of the Google Apps, or maybe they're coming from the Microsoft and the Outlook world, and things might be a little bit unfamiliar to them. So rather than just kind of giving them access and throwing them in the water, I think it's a good idea to have some type of on-site training or some type of session that you can go through and cover some of these topics. So specifically in Gmail, I think it's important that you explain to them how they can customize their inbox, with all of the different customization options such as priority inbox and so forth. You also want to get their signature set up if you haven't done it through an automated tool like FlashPanel. This is a good opportunity to help them get that set up. It's also good to show them how to do a vacation response, because I'm hoping everyone will let their employees go on vacation. And when they do, you'll want them to set that up in their Gmail so when people are contacting them, everyone else is aware that they're not in the office or in the school. I think it's also really important in Gmail to highlight, how threaded views work inside of Gmail. Because again, if they're coming from a legacy email system that doesn't support threaded views, that can sometimes be confusing to users. So you want to explain to them how that works and also, why it's better. Because instead of having multiple copies of the same email in your inbox, you've just got one copy with a thread of the conversation going. And lastly, I think it's important to also cover search and how the advanced search functionality works inside of Gmail. Because obviously, navigating between the different labels and areas inside of Gmail can be a lot faster if you know how to do searches properly. If you have Hangouts enabled for your organization, these are the topics I think you should cover. Definitely show them how to add contacts, to the Hangouts chat client from within Gmail or Google+. I also recommend, if you have Hangouts enabled in your organization, there's a setting you can do in the admin panel which will allow users to automatically add users within the domain without them having to accept the users. And that's a great way to encourage collaboration and communication within your organization. So with that, you'll also want to cover how instant messaging works, how to do voice and video hangouts with multiple participants. If you've enabled the option for them to invite external participants to Hangouts, that's also another good feature to show them. And also you can show them how to do phone calls through Hangouts, because that can actually save your organization a lot of money by letting them do free calls. For Google Calendar, typically you'll want to cover topics around creating, responding to events. You'll also want to show them how Hangouts work in events and how they are tied to events automatically, and how you can join Hangouts when they're in a calendar event. If you've enabled resources for your organization, it's also a good idea to show them how to book resources and also how to free up resources if they don't plan to actually use them. And then also you want to show them how to check availability. So when they've added all their guests to an event, they can use the find a time option and quickly see, who is actually available for the event and if they need to adjust it and so forth. And lastly, you want to cover how to do sharing of your calendar and how to view other people's calendars within the domain, because that's obviously a very useful feature for when you're booking events. Inside Google Drive, I think it's important to explain to them the concept of Google Drive and how it's a cloud storage mechanism, not just for your Google files, but also for any file type. And also explain to them, how you would actually get your files up into Google Drive, how you create files in Google Drive, what the different file types are, and if they're importing content from Microsoft Office, how that works, how they can convert that content into Google format to give them, better collaboration and sharing features. And if you're using desktops, you can also explain to them or laptops how to use the Drive Sync application to sync all their content to their local computer and back and forth. With the Google Docs editors, I think it's just important to kind of explain to them the purpose of Docs, Sheets, Slides, and Forms and what each of these applications are used for. If you get users into the habit of using these applications from day one, that's a really great way to kind of get people adopted onto the Docs platform. I think it's also important to show them the importance of sharing and the fact that when you share a document, there's one copy of it and everyone has access to it and you can collaborate on it in real time. And this is also a good opportunity for you to explain to your users, how to do printing within your organization, because these are the applications in Google Apps typically that they would be printing from. So that's the Google Apps 101. Now, Google Apps releases a lot of features on a regular basis. In the past 6 months alone, there's been over 50 changes made to Google Apps with some really great new features added. So part of your role as an administrator is kind of managing those changes and introducing them to users and also staying on top of them, because you as an administrator should be the first people to know that something is going to change. And there are ways you can do that and learn about changes in advance, and we're going to cover those in these topics. So let's talk about the Google Apps release tracks. I know Justin covered these in his session earlier, but just to reiterate, when you set up your domain, you can choose which release track it's on. The Rapid Release Track receives brand new features in Google Apps before the Scheduled Release Track. So being on the Scheduled Release Track allows you to have some time before new features are rolled out to your domain. Now, it's important to note that the Rapid and Scheduled Release Tracks only apply to Gmail, Calendar, Drive, and Sites, and within Drive it also covers the Docs editors, Docs, Sheets, Slides, and Forms, but it doesn't cover all of the Google Apps. So Google Apps such as Google Plus and Google Hangouts, do not follow these tracks, and they may receive features without notice. But again, on another slide, we'll show you how to stay up to date on those changes. A question we often receive is, how can I actually test features if I'm on the scheduled release track and I'm not on the rapid release track? Unfortunately, you can't really segment rapid and scheduled based on organization. It has to be set for the entire domain. But the way you can do it is you can actually set up a second domain and put that domain on the rapid release track to help you and your IT team test new features before they roll out to your scheduled track. So this can either be a subdomain from your existing domain, and you'll have to register it as a new Google Apps account. But once you've set it up, it can operate independently. You can change the settings, and you can put it on rapid and have everyone testing things over there. Or you can create a completely new domain that costs about $10 a year, and you can register that one to be on the rapid release track. Again, giving you a way to kind of test things in advance before they're actually rolled out to your domain. You also have the option of, enabling or disabling new features automatically on your domain. So that gives you a way to kind of introduce new features slowly and gives you enough chance to test them out before they are made available to everyone. I also recommend that you set up administrator alerts. This will help you not only with change management, but also with keeping up with changes that are being made by other administrators in your domain. So you can get to alerts by visiting the reports section of the admin console, clicking on manage alerts, and from there you can choose the email recipients and which alerts are enabled or disabled. So you can enable alerts such as suspicious logins, which will notify you in advance if someone is maybe trying to compromise someone's account, or maybe they're just having trouble accessing their account because they forgot their password. You can kind of know about that in advance. You can also enable, alerts for user changes, which will tell you if new users are added to the domain or if another administrator has suspended or deleted a user, so that way you're aware of what's happening in your domain. A really important one to enable, and I think everyone should enable this, is the apps outages alerts. What this does is, in the event that Google Apps has an outage, you will receive an alert from Google as soon as they've acknowledged that outage, and every time they make an update based on that outage, you will receive another email alert. So it basically lets you stay on top of things from Google directly in case of an outage. And that way, what we would typically do at Google is, if there was an outage and we got alerted about it, we would notify our users right away, so that way they know that something is wrong. Maybe Google Drive is down or they can't access something. You should also have an alternate way to communicate outages. In the rare event that Gmail is down, you won't obviously be able to email your users, so it's a good idea to maybe have a section in your support portal where you can post about outages and status updates on them. Now, staying up to date with all the changes that are being made to Google Apps can be a daunting task, but there are a lot of websites and resources out there that can help you. So definitely subscribe to the Google Apps calendars. They have kind of a list of all the changes that are being made to the rapid release, when those changes are going to be rolled out to the scheduled release, new features, in the admin console, and sometimes they have additional training resources on the calendar that are free, and you can get some really great, learning from that. I would also recommend subscribing to the Google Apps Update blog. You can subscribe by email, and this will actually email you whenever these changes are made, so you'll have it in your calendar and your email to stay on top of things. Now, although the Google Operating System blog is not an official Google site, it's definitely a great resource. They stay up to date on a lot of the changes that are happening in Google, and even changes that might not necessarily get an official blog post or announcement. So that's another really great resource you can subscribe to. And lastly, I highly recommend joining our Google Plus community for Google admins, and you can get to it by visiting the bit.ly link there, bit.ly/Google admins. We have about 2,000 Google administrators in there, and we're just sharing tips and tricks with each other, asking each other questions, and it's a great way to stay up to date. I highly recommend also subscribing to the Google Guru website. They have hundreds of videos produced by themselves and also by other Google Apps partners and experts in the Google Apps ecosystem. So it's a really great way to get free training resources. You can also distribute these videos to your users. They cover updates on all the latest changes that are happening within Google Apps. And they even have a lot of guides, for best practices for both administrators and for your end users. So you can get to that by visiting googleguru.com with 2 O's. Now, a little bit about our own solution, Synergize. What we do, as I said at the beginning, is provide an on-demand training solution that's available to users directly inside the Google Apps interface. It's fully interactive. It also provides administrators with measurable reporting options so you can keep track of who's doing training in your organization. It's extremely scalable and secure, running on the Google Cloud platform, again, supporting over 1 million end users. You can also customize Synergize with your own video content if you have any content that you want to distribute, and our system is always up to date. So if you'd like to learn more, you can visit synergize.com. And with that, I'm going to give you a quick live demonstration to show you how the system works. So you'll notice right now I'm inside a live Gmail account, but the difference you'll see is the training menu from Synergize is inserted directly into the interface. And it's also contextual to the current application that I'm in. So when I'm in Gmail and I click on the training menu, I'm going to see lessons that are related to Gmail. And remember, this is a live account, so when I play a lesson, you'll see that it actually plays right inside of the interface.
To start composing a new email, click the large Compose button on the left-hand side of your screen.
So all of the lessons are audio, text, and visually guided, and they're also fully interactive. So in this particular example, I know everyone here knows how to compose an email, but remember, this is something you could give to your users on day one and get them introduced into Google Apps. When I click on the Compose button, you'll see the lesson will continue.
Great. Next, you will need to know the email address of the person you wish to send email to. We'll go ahead and type in the Synergize team email address so you can let us know what you think of this lesson. The subject line is used to give your recipient a quick summary of what your email is about. We'll go ahead and fill this in for you. This is the message body, and it is where you can compose the actual message you want to send in the email. Please write us a message, and when you are finished typing, press Enter to continue the lesson.
So as you can see, the software is intelligent. It can take actions on behalf of the user, such as clicking on things and typing in text, and it can also ask the user to take those actions as well. So again, a fully interactive experience that they actually have to go through in order to get through a lesson.
Now you have the essential elements of your email composed. You could send the email now if you wanted to. In the next lesson, we are going to show you some more advanced options you can use with composing email.
So that's a quick overview of how a lesson works inside of Synergize. Now, in addition to Gmail, we also cover training in the other Google apps. So if I switch to Calendar, you'll see the lessons are contextual to Calendar. We also cover Google Drive. We cover Google Sites. And we have training in the individual Docs editors, including Docs, Slides, and spreadsheets. And the way our lessons are structured is they start with the basics and they get more advanced as you go along. So you'll see, for example, in spreadsheets, we get into some fairly in-depth topics. And really, it can give them a good 101 overview of how to do things inside of these applications. So that's how things work in Synergize on the end user side. On the administrator side, we have a reporting portal that you can go to generate reports for your domain. So this will show you kind of the overall lesson usage and completion within your domain. And you can also generate reports either for the entire domain, or you can do an advanced report where you can pick a specific Google app or even a specific organizational unit, generate a report, and actually see a list of all the users, which applications and lessons they did, when they completed them, and so forth. So this gives you a way to measure all of the content that they're doing inside of Synergize. In addition to generating reports, you can also customize lessons in Synergize. So you have the option of going into the lessons portal. You can create a new custom lesson. You can choose who has access to the lesson, again, either the entire domain, specific OU, or an individual. You can choose which Google Apps your lesson is going to appear in, and you can upload your video directly into the Google Apps interface. And that way, when you add custom content, it'll appear inside the Synergize training menu, and your videos will actually play right inside of the interface. So it's a really great way to give users one-click access to our content and your own content as well. So that's a quick overview of how Synergize works. In addition to that, one thing I should mention is what our update schedule is like. So with our update schedule, we provide you with a 14-day turnaround from any new features that are rolled out to the rapid release track. And the way that works is as soon as a new feature hits rapid release, within 14 days, we will create new lessons for those features. And that way, once those new features are out, and they hit the scheduled release track, your users will get notified with a notification icon letting them know that there's a new lesson available. And when they click on the training menu, they'll see those new lessons right away. Just going to go back into full screen here. So another thing I would like to announce is that we do have training for end users in the 7 core Google Apps I mentioned. At the end of this month, we're actually going to be launching our interactive training system directly inside the Google Apps admin console. And the best part about this launch is it's going to be completely free for Google Apps administrators. We cover a wide range of topics, including the admin console itself, users, organizations, admin roles, services, Google Apps services, groups, device and user management, reports and alerts, security, domains, additional features, and we have some lessons on best practices for all of these areas in the admin panel. So that will be launching on July 1st. And the way you can get that in your Google Apps admin console is simply by visiting synergize.com and installing the extension. For end user training, the pricing for Synergize is very simple. It's $10 per employee per year for businesses. If you're an educational institution, we only charge for full-time employees, and with the purchase of full-time employee licenses, students receive free licenses. So we'll cover your entire school or school district or university. And if you're an enterprise customer with more than 5,000 users, we have a site license that can be given to you at a discounted rate. And if you're interested, you can contact sales@synergize.com to find out about that. So with that, I'd like to wrap up my presentation and thank you. We're also going to give everyone who's attending a 1-year free subscription to Synergize for themselves across all the Google Apps, and you can get that by visiting the form at bit.ly/Synergize. We also recommend you join the community, again, bit.ly/GoogleAdmins. And if you have any questions about Synergize, change management, onboarding new users, or Google Apps in general, feel free to reach out to me, Majid@synergize.com. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot, Majid. Great presentation. We've got some really good questions that I'd like to get to. There's a couple here that are fairly specific that I'd like to touch on, and then we'll get into some more general questions in a second. First of all, a question from Adam who makes a really good point. Is it possible to set a vacation autoresponder to only go out to internal users rather than anybody who sends you an email? So, for example, if you are, like Majid talked about, if you're out of the office and someone sends you an email, you can set it up so that a auto response goes out letting the other person know that you're on vacation or you're out of the office. This can obviously present some issues. For example, if you're on vacation and the wrong person sends you an email and they find out that you're on vacation, it could leave you open to getting robbed or something, which would be bad. So there is an option inside for for end users, for vacation responders, to have it only go out internally. And something that we recommend doing anyway is keeping the vacation autoresponders vague, even if you are only distributing them internally. It's just, from a security perspective, it's a good thing to keep in mind, just to let people know that you're not going to be able to answer their emails. Specific reasons may not be necessary. Another question, we got a lot of questions about adding users to different org units. Like Justin mentioned in the last session, that's not currently possible with Google Apps. I think Christine mentioned a good practice for dealing with org units is try and keep them as broad and as general as possible. That way you won't have to worry about people not fitting into a specific org unit or having too many to deal with, which can be a problem as well. There's a couple of general questions that I'd like to get into from the Google Moderators section. The first one is, what's the best way to get Outlook, people that are using Outlook, or specifically Outlook addicts, getting them to use Gmail proper? So Majid, I'll let you handle this a little bit as well, but I think as far with Google Apps, I think one of the main things that you need to convey to your users is that there are differences between Outlook and Gmail, but there's good differences and there's value with Gmail, and expressing that value and being open with your users and showing them what works well in Gmail is a great starting point. And then Majid, if you have some other things you'd like to offer, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is you have to kind of sell it a little bit to your users if they've been on Outlook for a long time. But the way you can do that is simply by showing them why Gmail is a great tool, as Andrew mentioned. So some of the things I would probably highlight is the fact that you can access it from any device and any computer. You don't have to any desktop application installed. That's obviously a big advantage. Another thing I would highlight is the differences between folders in Outlook and labels in Gmail, and the fact that you can actually have email messages applied to multiple labels, and how that works, because once they understand that, they'll realize that's actually a better and easier way to manage your email. And again, as I mentioned in the Gmail 101 training, I would definitely show them, how to do search and all of the advanced search functionality, because a lot of working with email is, going back and finding old emails. And if you can get to those emails quicker and easier, that's obviously a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think another question which is kind of in the same boat is, on the other hand, how do you express the same thing for people who are using Microsoft Office? How do you encourage them to start using Google Drive? I think, from a general perspective, the same practices are definitely the right way to go. Being open with your users, expressing the value of Google Drive. Like Majid said, similar to Gmail, Google Drive is accessible from anywhere. You can still have it on your desktop, but you can also access it from your files from any device. There's sharing settings that can make the collaborative experience a lot better, and can improve the experience for your users. So, being open about Google Drive, showing them the value, showing how you can, if they feel like there's something missing, showing them how you can incorporate third-party apps through the Google Drive apps section. These are all great points that you can make to your users to encourage them to start using Drive rather than Office.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also highlight the fact that if people are creating documents and spreadsheets and presentations in the Google Docs editors, that again, you're working with one copy of those files, so you're not having to save it and send revisions back and forth. And also, I would highly recommend expressing the benefits of having shared folders, specifically if you're working in a team environment, how that makes things easier. You know, you don't have to explicitly share everything with your team. If you've got, say, a folder shared with a Google group that has all your team members in it, it makes it easier to manage and share. And I think another great thing they recently added to Gmail is if you are sending people links to Google Drive files and they don't have the appropriate access to those files, Gmail will actually detect that, and it'll offer you to actually share those files right from Gmail. So there's definitely a lot of advantages, and they just really need to be communicated and trained to your users.
Yep, absolutely, great points. All right, last one of the questions that we're going to get to for today. What are the most important first steps that you should take as a Google Apps admin when training new users on Google Apps? I think Majid, might have a little bit more experience with this, but I would say, in my opinion, the first thing that you should do is take a step back and take a look at what type of organization you are and what type of people that you have in your organization. Understanding what kind of people they are, how they like to learn, the best way they process information is a really good starting point, because if you don't know the best way that people learn, you're going to be trying different methods and you're going to be wasting your time trying to express the same information to them over and over again, rather than, you know, understanding, does my organization need hands-on training on a weekly basis to start off? They need a series of videos that they can follow on their own. They need a study guide that they can work off of their first few days on Google. So these are all different ways that you can approach training, but different people respond well to those different methods. So, Majid, if you want to add anything to that, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in determining, what kind of learner they are is really important. I would also try to do something to assess their skill level in Google Apps, because, I've shown you kind of what I think you should cover in Google Apps, but it's also good to have a conversation with them and understand where they're coming from. Maybe they've only used Gmail at a personal level, or maybe at their previous organization they were already using Google Apps. So it's important to kind of understand that and tailor the training accordingly. And of course, providing them with resources beyond your on-site in-person trainings, such as Google Guru and Synergize, can be a great way, to give them that support that they might need in their first few weeks.